Hello and welcome to Season 5, Episode 19 of Conservation Conversations with BirdLife South Africa. I'm your co-host, Christina Hagen, coming to you live from Cape Town. And joining me this evening is our brand new co-host, John Kingon, coming to you live from Johannesburg.
And of course, everybody, we have over 160 episodes of Conservation Conversations recorded, and these are all available on YouTube. So all that one need do is head over to the BirdLife South Africa YouTube account, like and subscribe to make sure that you don't miss out on any further episodes of Conservation Conversations.
And of course, we are on all major social media channels, and you can use the hashtag Conservation Conversations to let us know what you think of the show.
Now, we are aiming to keep these webinars free for everybody to learn and enjoy from. But if you do enjoy the series and you feel the need to contribute, it would be greatly, greatly appreciated. And one can do that by scanning this QR code currently on your screen, which will take you to the donation link. Alternatively, you can visit the BirdLife South Africa website and see how you can donate directly to our bank account.
And we are running our annual BirdLife South Africa raffle, where you can stand a chance to win an 8-day, 7-night birding trip for two to Brazil. So you can visit our website, birdlife.org.za/raffle for more details and to get your hands on those tickets. There are only 1,000 tickets available, so please head on over there and get yours today.
Now, before we get onto tonight's webinar, we want to just take a few words about our upcoming webinars. And these are really, really exciting. Christina, I think if you wanted to just take us through who we can expect to see, there's some really, really incredible talks that are lined up here.
Sure, yeah. It's quite a lineup of our BirdLife South Africa colleagues. So first we have Sam Ralston and John Gibbs talking to us about birds and renewable energy. That's on the 17th of September. And then we have Lorinda Hart, who will be talking about birds and agrochemicals. That's a new program that we've started here at BirdLife. So it should be really fascinating to see what Lorinda's been up to. And then we have Jessica Wilmot talking to us about migration and migratory birds, and that's on the 15th of October. So please make a note of those. And if you are signed up, registered for Conservation Conversations, you will be registered for those episodes, so you can just tune in on the night. And so please do join us for those.
Amazing. I'm very excited to see what our colleagues bring and present to us all. These are fascinating, fascinating topics. But moving on to this evening, where we have a presentation given by none other than Justin Henry, who, as Christina so rightfully highlighted, it is his first appearance on Conservation Conversations.
Justin joined BirdLife South Africa in November 2023 in the Species Conservation Program. He obtained his BSc Honours in Conservation Ecology from the University of Stellenbosch, and he has also worked in various conservation positions across the country. In doing so, he's gathered a vast in reserve management, land stewardship, and the wildlife industry. And that, along with his competency in handling firearms and reloading, make him well suited for this role. His focus has been on the lead advocacy project, and through research and testing, he's engaging with various stakeholders to encourage the shift in lead to use lead-free bullets in hunting, culling, and game management. His duties also include managing and expanding the Vulture Safe Zones already under BirdLife South Africa's management. So, Justin, we're very much looking forward to your talk, so you can get started and start sharing as soon as you're ready.
Good evening, everybody, especially those joining from overseas. I'm going to talk to you this evening about the work that I've been doing since joining BirdLife in last year, November. And my role is in South Africa, the BirdLife South Africa's Vulture Project. just a quick status of the vultures in South Africa and why we do the work we do. These are 6 of the 8 or 9 occurring species found in South Africa. They are all threatened. Critically endangered include the white-headed, the hooded, and the white-backed. And endangered are lappet-faced and cape, and with the bearded being near threatened. And as obligate scavengers that feed gregariously, they are at extreme risk from intentional and unintentional poisoning. And mass poisoning events have a major impact on their populations as their reproductive rates are slow. Our focus is particularly on the white-backed and caped vultures. So my main focus has been the Lead Advocacy Project. And you might be asking yourself, what is the link between lead and vultures? Just a bit of background on our project. Our main focus is to reduce the incidence of lead poisoning in vultures in South Africa by encouraging the shift towards the use of lead-free ammunition in the hunting, shooting, and game management sectors. The reason we're doing this is because elevated blood levels were detected in South Africa's gyps vultures, that's the white-backed and the cape. And this is from fragments of lead core ammunition ingested when vultures scavenge on carcasses, gut piles, and remains. And this research was done by Dr. Linda van den Heerf, my manager, who has shown through isotope analysis the lead from lead core ammunition is responsible for lead poisoning. Just quickly to go over the terms that I'm going to use during my talk, for those of you who are not very familiar with ammunition. When we refer to ammunition, we refer to the complete round or cartridge, including all of the components, being the bullet, case, powder, and the primer. And these are what you would call a round or a cartridge. They are not considered a bullet. A bullet is the projectile that leaves the barrel of a firearm after firing. Just quickly talking about bullet history, with the invention of gunpowder around the 9th century in China, there's always been fascination and an arms race with firearms. And the first sort of projectiles that were developed were these crude iron and lead balls developed in the 1500s. Later in the 19th century, in France, a mini ball was designed, and you can start seeing first attempts at designing something aerodynamic. Later that century in Switzerland, a full metal jacket was developed, and that's where they're using 2 metals, mainly copper and a lead core. And then finally, just before the turn of the 20th century, in Germany, they developed what they called the Spitze bullet, which just means a pointy. And what is the significance of this? Well, the majority of bullet weight by lead, the majority of weight of a bullet is lead. And what we know is that lead is a toxic heavy metal with no known biological function. And what are some of the effects of lead? Well, it affects all main systems and organs within the body, particularly affecting brain and organ, leading to organ failure and reproductive disruption as well. But in the case of vultures, it's particularly the sublethal effects are particularly around anemia. And we've removed lead from a variety of industrial sources, namely fuel and paint and water pipes. So begs the question as to why we are still exposed to it in ammunition. So how does the lead from lead bullets enter the ecosystem and get taken up by vultures? Well, if you look at the terminal ballistics of lead core bullets, terminal ballistics being the study of bullet behavior upon impact, you will notice that there are hundreds of fragments of lead within this image that you can see. And what it is, it's a synchrotron, which is a very high powerful X-ray. And this is a lead core bullet that's been fired into a clear ballistic gel. And it demonstrates the level of fragmentation of lead on impact. And these measurements are really microscopic. The small picture at the bottom is 200 microns, so that's a millionth of a meter. So it's really microscopic, and many people refer to it as lead dust. And on impact on game and target animals, these X-rays indicate the level of lead deposition on the intended targets being antelope in this case. And you can see from a headshot to shots in the chest and lower down in the abdomen, all lead to massive amounts of lead deposition in high numbers of fragments throughout, close to where the entry point is. So from those previous slides, it's clear to see that lead poisoning in vultures follows this process where vultures scavenging on carcasses or the remains from carcasses and gut piles left out. They feed on these, and then during the breeding season, they bring these back to the nest and feed them to your chicks. And this is how you get lead poisoning in both adults and chicks. If we look at some X-rays taken of Californian condors, we unfortunately in South Africa don't have any X-rays available of our own vultures, but we hopefully like to do that in the future. In both, you can see clearly the lead fragment has been highlighted and has led to death of these birds. The first image is a radiograph of Condor 318, and this bird died in 2012. And the second image is also the X-ray of a deceased, so that condor was already deceased when this X-ray was taken. And just to touch on it, since 1987, there were only 27 Californian condors alive in the wild, but luckily over 1,000 eggs have hatched successfully since then. But there are approximately 500 birds alive today through the conservation efforts of the Californian state government. So a bit of work that we do to determine the lead levels is we travel to Dronfield Nature Reserve in the Northern Cape. It's an annual monitoring program, which I'll talk about a bit later. And we during our monitoring, we retrieve chicks from the nest and we bring them down and we do a variety of tests. And one of the things we do is we draw blood samples, which are then analyzed in a lab in George. And just looking at the graph there, this is the 40 chicks that we sampled in 2023. And you can see that of the 40 chicks sampled, the average blood lead level is 24 micrograms per deciliter. That is the unit of measure we use. And it's quite alarming because anything above 10 micrograms per deciliter is considered above background exposure. So 31 of the chicks sampled were above what would be considered background exposure. And there are 3 of them above, or 4 chicks above 50, which is considered severe blood lead levels. So when we look at a cross-section of a bullet, and this happens to be a lead core bullet, it will be a bullet that has the most lead in its core of all bullets. But what I did there was measure the weight of lead between common calibers used for hunting and game management and culling, being the small 224 calibers up to 375. And if you look at the amount of lead that can be deposited from a single bullet, it's between 2.5 to just under 13 grams of lead from a single bullet. Now, if we look at the research done by Dr. Linda van der Heever and associates, we looked at the sublethal impacts of lead poisoning on gyps vultures, and they particularly looked at what it would take to inhibit 50% of the delta aminolevic acid, and what that amount was lower in Cape vultures. It's only 18.8 micrograms, and in white-backed vultures, it's slightly higher at 52, just less than 53 micrograms. And delta aminolevic acid is an amino acid which is used in the synthesis of heme, which eventually is used in the production of hemoglobin. And that is why lead poisoning can lead to physical conditions such as anemia. So as you can see from a single bullet, you can potentially, and the fragmentation from the images that you saw previously, you can potentially poison an entire cohort of vultures scavenging on a single carcass. So what is the solution? Well, I'm happy to tell you that there is good news and that there is a solution, and it's readily available. The solution is lead-free bullets, and they are made from a variety of metals, including copper, brass alloys, and other materials such as zinc, tin, aluminium, polymers, and nickel. And the question we're asking next is, well, how do they work? Well, their name does give it away a bit, but basically expanding bullets deform upon impact when they enter the target. They increase the frontal surface area of the bullet, creating a wound channel and depositing their energy that way. The second type of lead-free bullet that we encounter is called a solid. For any of you that have had the privilege to go on a dangerous game walk in any of our private or protected nature reserves will know that your guides will be carrying this sort of round in their dangerous game rifle. And this bullet is specially designed for deep straight line penetration through heavy, thick-skinned animals such as elephant and buffalo. And the last and possibly most interesting type of lead-free bullet is fragmenting bullets. This draws a lot of design techniques from the self-defense and handgun industry, but are becoming more applicable to the hunting, culling, and game management sectors due to the nature of energy release upon the target, so the terminal ballistics. So if we look at the difference in terminal ballistics between lead-free and lead-core bullets, both of these bullets have been retrieved after impact with the targets. The lead-free bullet on the left-hand side particularly retains over 98% of its weight, usually 100. In most cases, it doesn't break apart if it's, say, just an expanding bullet. In this case, it has shed some petals. And the lead bullet on the right-hand side breaks up into many, many fragments upon impact. There's a rapid release of energy through the deposition of this material upon impact. And these are the main differences between the two types of bullets. If you look at bullet construction, how that affects terminal ballistics, these are three bullets from quite common calibers. And this diagram or this graph is just showing you the level of expansion of a copper monolithic bullet at different velocities and different distances. And you can see within 100 meters, it expands the greatest, and the further away the target is from the point of fire, that level of expansion decreases. And obviously that will influence your hunting techniques. This little diagram just explains graphically the terminal ballistics between a lead core and a lead-free copper bullet. Both of them create a central cavity, and some people refer to as a secondary cavitation or a temporary cavity, which is just damaged muscle or fiber or tissue, body tissue. But the main difference being is that the bullet fragments from a lead core bullet are lead-containing fragments that break apart upon impact, whereas the copper monolithic bullet remains intact. It still creates a central cavity. It still creates a temporal cavity depending on the size and the extent of deformation of that frontal area, but it retains all of its mass and has increased penetration as opposed to its lead core counterpart. Right. Accessibility and availability is an important aspect of advocating for the use of lead-free ammunition. Many people will bring it up as a reason to not shift over to lead-free ammunition. And I can gladly say that that lead-free ammunition is available here in South Africa. And we actually have 14 local lead-free ammunition manufacturers, some of them producing bullets and others producing rounds. And for those of you who want to, we also have international brands available in South Africa. And these are quite common brand names that some of you might know. Barnes being the most famous of lead-free bullets, as they've been producing it for over 30 years. And what's great is that both bullets and rounds are available. So just so that you remember, the bullet is the projectile. And so if you're going to purchase bullets, you're going to need to get into reloading. But luckily, there are companies selling lead-free rounds. So for the occasional hunter, people who are not really interested or capable of reloading, they can buy rounds lead-free, which is really great. This is another slide that I used when I gave a talk recently in the Waterberg, just to demonstrate the availability of lead-free in proximity to where I was. So I gave a talk at the Rankin Community Hall, which is that red star there in the Waterberg between Modimolle and Thabazimbi. And I just found 5 gun shops in the vicinity that we could be considered that you could drive to in a day to go and collect, and purchase lead-free ammunition. And I called each of the shops in these towns and asked them what lead-free bullets and ammunition they had available. And I'm really happy to say that all 5 of them did carry an option of lead-free, some of them more than others. Each of them did have a lead-free option. And with time, this is going to increase as more and more people start using lead-free ammunition. And so the demand for it will increase. And these gun shops will be able to stock it on their shelves, knowing that it will be sold. So Out there 24, just as the example, was the best representative carrying the widest range of lead-free ammunition. And they're based in Modimolle, and they also had an online option. So some people might say that we're too remote and there isn't anything available. Well, Rankin's Pass community was pretty remote, about as remote as it gets. And then all in Limpopo, and there were 5 vendors available to use. So that was a really good sign. Next, we can discuss the affordability of lead-free bullets. Many people will talk about the cost of lead-free bullets, and that it is prohibitive and much more expensive. And so what I did when I first started is I did a review of all the ammunition available in South Africa, and included in that all the costs and all the prices of what was available, and so that I could do price comparisons. And I'm happy to dispel the misinformation that lead-free bullets are not as expensive, and in some cases cheaper than the lead core. But this again was through a lot of research and finding everything that's available. And so in this slide here, I've just taken a single bullet diameter. It's 0.243. It's quite a common caliber. It is a small caliber. And I just took the prices from a gun shop in Pretoria compared with the lead-free bullet manufacturers' prices online. And I was able there to get some average prices so that we can show that the green bar at the bottom, the South African produced copper monolithics, are R1.60 less or 70 cents less than premium lead core bullets. So the emphasis there is on premium lead core bullets. You can still definitely get cheaper lead core bullets like PMP, which will be less, but people will, the word is getting out that those bullets, the performance of those bullets is questionable. So this comparison is with premium lead core bullets, but you can see if you look at the South African produced copper monolithics, they are cheaper on average than premium lead core. The yellow bar indicates the South African brass bullets. They come in at the cheapest, and the reason for that is brass bullets are much easier to work with. It's a much easier material, and so the price point can be much lower. The effort required to produce brass bullets is much less, and so that's a really good thing. And then I included the international copper monolithics because people might question the quality of South African produced monolithics. And those are considerably more expensive, almost double the price than South African stuff. So it's good news that they are in a similar price point, and there's no reason to not try them. Then did another analysis of another small bullet diameter. This is 0.224, and also demonstrates the variety of options that are available in different grain weights of the bullet. And that's the measurement we use for describing the unit to measure grain. And there are a variety of options produced in South Africa. The green bars are what's produced locally. The orange are international lead core bullet offerings. And it shows you that the prices are very similar. There's a couple of options that are less than the lead core, and the average is fairly similar. There are a couple of more expensive options from South Africa, the Spartans and the Peregrines and the Axes, but we're talking a difference of a few rand. And if that is over the total amount of your hunt, as a total of your hunt, it's a considerably insignificant amount. This is another important slide with great information, and this is for people who don't want to reload. This is lead-free rounds compared to lead rounds produced by a company called Badger Ammunition. They're based in south of Johannesburg. So they're selling lead-free rounds, the complete unit. So those of us who are occasional hunters just want to buy a box of 20 rounds that they use each year, this will be your option. And the owner there is very supportive of our project and shifting towards lead-free ammunition. And that's why he's working with South African bullet producers, and he's using South African produced lead-free bullets in his lead-free rounds to come out at a price point that's similar or less than the alternative conventional lead core bullets used in lead ammunition. And so I just chose 6 very common calibers there from 223 to 375. And you can see in some of the examples, the lead-free round is actually less than the lead core option. So 243, it's less. In 3006, it's less. In 300 Win Mag, it's less. And the others are, once again, there's a difference of a few rand. So that might translate to in 375, it might translate into an 80 to 100 rand difference in total per box of ammunition, which is a reasonable and acceptable amount to encourage this or for the use of lead-free ammunition. So what are the reasons to not shift to lead-free? Well, there really aren't any. As you can see from the slide, you can purchase it online. Companies like RAM will ship both rounds and bullets to locations countrywide. Pudo, which is a really efficient and affordable option, can ship bullets from the manufacturers to any Pudo locker, and Pudo lockers are also countrywide. And it's proudly South African, most of these products. In fact, all of the bullets and the rounds that I've been speaking about are all locally made, and local is lacquer. And importantly, they're producing both bullets and rounds. So they cater for both reloaders and occasional hunters, or anybody who just doesn't want to have the capital outlay of reloading, can purchase rounds. Here's some important information and research that I've been doing on journal papers discussing the performance of lead-free ammunition in comparison to conventional lead core ammunition. These are all journals from overseas, and I hope to, in time, produce something similar for the South African conditions based on using South African produced bullets. And so the first paper there, comparison of fragmenting lead-based and lead-free bullets for aerial shooting of wild pigs. The results showed that lead-based and lead-free bullets are similarly effective for aerial shooting, but the bullet types behave differently, with lead bullets displaying a higher degree of fragmentation. So that paper is pointing out that fragmentation of lead-free bullets is much, much greater, and that deposition of lead in the carcass is really high. There were also positive results from the second paper of roe deer and wild boar shot in Germany, found that it performed equally as good within reasonable distances in Germany, and they were using German-produced lead-free ammunition. And that ammunition is actually designed for shooting in forests, so the range is much less, maybe up to only 150 meters. They found that in similar shooting conditions, it performed adequately. The third paper there on use in elk in North America by Parksport, that they found that provided with the necessary precision for accurate shot placement in spot and stalk hunting conditions, that these bullets typically accomplished instantaneous or near instantaneous incapacitation of elk wherever vital areas of the body were impacted. We conclude that non-lead bullets are effective for wildlife management and hunting scenarios. So this is a really great paper. It talks to the need to be accurate and for accurate shot placement. And they clearly state in their findings that as long as that was achieved, then near instantaneous death and ethical conditions were found. The fourth paper there, which is a little bit small, are lead-free rifle bullets as effective at killing wildlife? The study demonstrates that lead-free bullets are equal to conventional hunting bullets in terms of killing effectiveness, and thus equally meet the welfare requirements of killing wildlife as painlessly as possible. Widespread introduction and use of lead-free bullets should be encouraged as it prevents environmental contamination, seriously toxic pollutant, and contributes to the conservation of a wide variety of threatened or endangered raptors, other members of the Guild of Scavengers. So this is a really super paper pointing out to a lot of important topics, such as that not only vultures, such as in my case and my focus, are affected, but that all scavenging animals, including both mammals and other raptors, are equally at risk to unintentional poisoning from lead exposure, will also greatly benefit from shifting to lead-free ammunition, and that the lead-free ammunition used worked equally as well, that the welfare requirements were held up and abided by. The fifth paper, which importantly talks to the terminal ballistics, so wound ballistics, which is an important study on its own. And it showed that lead-free bullets are equal to conventional hunting bullets in terms of killing effectiveness, and thus equally meet the welfare requirements of killing wildlife as painlessly as possible. So once again, they're touching on the welfare requirements, but importantly, they analyzed these carcasses and looked at the wound channels in the terminal ballistics and found that the lead-free ammunition created an equal wound channel as the conventional lead core bullets. And the last paper showed that the relative killing efficiency of lead and copper bullets is similar in terms of animal flight distance after fatal shots. So this is another important issue, something that's been brought up in our South African conditions, which is a fair consideration, is that animals can and at times run a certain distance, and in different habitats that can have a serious consequence. So if you're in open habitats like the Kalahari or the grasslands, you might be able to follow your quarry with your eye or binoculars and see it go down. But in the thick bushveld conditions, in the northern eastern parts of the country or the Eastern Cape thicket biome, you might struggle to retrieve your carcass. And so it is an important consideration to take into account when using lead-free ammunition. But from these 6 published journal papers, they're all showing that the performance of lead-free ammunition is suitable and adequate and really supports our work. All right, so some of the work I've been doing, some of the exciting work, is doing range testing and to sort of determine some of the aspects of the particular bullets for the particular scenarios I intend to use them in. So in this example here, I'm looking at ballistic gels. And I am looking at the terminal ballistics of fragmenting brass bullets to be used for game management purposes. And these ballistic gels that I made were fired at 100 meters, and you can clearly see there is fragmentation upon impact. There is a massive release of energy. The bullet does as it is described. The shank continues through the bullet, and that's what that straight line that you see on the bottom left-hand picture. But within the first sort of 10 centimeters of the target, occurs and the bullet works as intended, which was a great result. Also tested into an international, an IBC, a bulk container, a water bulk container, 1,000 liters. We use this because the bullets can't penetrate all the way through, and then we can retrieve bullets at the bottom of the tank at the end of testing. And what we do it for is we're testing the expansion between different brands of copper bullets produced here in South Africa. The one I'm holding there in my hand is something we retrieved, and we can just compare the size, the diameter of the front of the bullet, how much it expanded. And we can just make a comparison between what is produced here locally in a particular caliber. And those results were also really great. Another test we did was a penetration test. We fired through a ballistic gel, which is in front of that Siemens box. And then the bullet traveled through the ballistic gel, which was about 10 centimeters, 100 mils. It then entered these two cardboard boxes, and at the back was a stack of newspapers, which was the backstop. And on the inside of these boxes is cotton wool. And the reason we use that is because the cotton wool catches the bullet, but it doesn't deform the bullet any further. And therefore, it doesn't exaggerate the amount of expansion that a bullet is going to achieve. It's only going to expand. Um, the expansion is determined only by the ballistic gel that it passed through. And the cotton wool also gave us an indication of the level of penetration of each bullet. So we compare different bullet types depending on how far into the boxes it traveled. And then we could retrieve them and have a look at them, and we could weigh the bullets and see how much weight was lost if it was a fragmenting brass bullet, or we could measure retained mass if it was a copper bullet. And this also worked really well. And the final test here is a really great result. It's testing both penetration and expansion. We're using the same bullet in this test, which is a bi-metal copper monolithic. That means there's two metals involved in this bullet. It's got an aluminium tip and a copper. The rest is copper hollow point. And the first, excuse the airplane flying over. The first image is the reduced load, and the second image is a standard load. So what we were testing is, can we achieve similar terminal performance if we reduce the load in this bullet by using less gunpowder and a different type of gunpowder? And the reason we wanted to test this is particularly in small reserves with lodges, where you run the risk of over penetration and unintentionally damaging something in the background. If you can have a reduced load, then you have reduced penetration, and this bullet will not travel as far beyond with less energy after it enters the target animal that you are currently harvesting. And it was a really, really great result. This is an incredibly well-designed bullet made locally here in South Africa. And you can see from that top channel in the ballistic gel is that it took a bit longer. Entry is from the left-hand side and exit was on the right-hand side of this gel. So you can see the bottom, the standard load obviously expanded earlier on, but the reduced load did expand at about halfway into the gel and expanded to a similar or the same extent as the standard load, which was a really great result. And it also then didn't penetrate as far through into the cotton wool boxes, and we were able to retrieve it. So that was a really great result for use in small reserves. And then where are we in action using lead-free ammunition? Well, that testing was done in a reserve in the Associated Private Nature Reserves, which borders the Kruger National Park. And I'm working with the conservation managers there, helping them to shift over to lead-free ammunition. And so I go down and I bring with them a suitable lead-free bullet, and I facilitate testing and show them, and we try and get the bullet to work in their particular rifles and their firearms. And I present on our research and the work we've been doing. We're also working with conservation outcomes on a project that they have in the low veld to harvest venison. And one of the criteria of that is to only use lead-free ammunition. And so once again, we can come in and provide some advice to harvesters on what is suitable and what works. Another great part to our project is we are in communication with sand parks and although they already use lead-free solid ammunition in their carry rounds for trails guides, we hope that they can use lead-free for all firearm usage across all of the reserves across South Africa. So that's a really great project that we have just started. We also work in the Waterberg Biosphere Reserve, helping reserves there to shift over to lead-free, advising them on what works with their firearms, and in the Vulture Safe Zones that we have there, and at Dronfield Nature Reserve, where they have to access game. Another event that we assist with, this is an event that was created by the Endangered Wildlife Trust. It's a really excellent event called the Battle of the Bullets. It's an advocacy day where we promote the use of lead-free ammunition. And what we do is we go to an area. This particular event was held in February, just outside of Kimberley. And it's a day to bring lead-free ammunition manufacturers and the local hunting and shooting community together as well as the conservation organizations such as ourselves or EWT or Wildlife Act and SA Hunters. And we present on lead poisoning and the threat of it. We present on vulture conservation. And then we give an opportunity to the lead-free ammunition manufacturers to talk about their products. And then we give a practical demonstration at a shooting range to those in attendance where we demonstrate the performance of lead-free bullets. And it's a really, really great day for people to see firsthand how they work and what's available, and to speak to the manufacturers and get that that face-to-face time with these guys who are doing this. And a lot of these lead-free bullet manufacturers are doing this as a hobby. It's a second business. A lot of them, it's a very small company. Sometimes it's just a one-man band, and they're doing it after hours on the weekends. And so they're a really committed bunch of guys, passionate about their craft, about perfecting it. And a day like this is a really great thing to bring all of the stakeholders together. Then a lot of what my other work involves is the Vulture Safe Zones. And here we try and reduce threats to vultures in key conservation areas. And there are 8 points that you need to follow. The main ones are you need to reduce the possibility of electrocutions from transmission lines. You need to prevent drowning in water reservoirs. You need to keep any breeding attempts by vultures on the reserve or property uninterrupted. If you provide supplementary feeding, the carcass needs to be cleaned from any harmful veterinary drugs. If any poison control is used on the property, the people need to be trained accordingly. Importantly, there in caps is lead-free ammunition. Can only be used. You need to monitor the vultures, and any mortalities need to be reported to us. And the Vulture Safe Zones that BirdLife South Africa manages in South Africa, there are 3 of them: Lapalala Wilderness in the north, KwaZulu Kalahari in Northern Cape, and Zululand in KwaZulu-Natal. Also manages an art national park in Mozambique. And there, the orange dot just above Kimberley is Dronfield Nature Reserve, which is a very special area to us. Not yet declared a Vulture Safe Zone, but something we want to work towards. This image just clearly shows why it is such a beautiful, beautiful place in a really special area. And we have a long-standing relation with Dronfield Nature Reserve, where a 31-year-long white-backed vulture monitoring program has been running every year. This is just a time lapse of us last year setting up, retrieving a white-backed vulture chick from a tree. We then bring it down to a table where we measure things like bill and wing length and record biometrics. We attach a wing tag, SAF ring, and we draw a blood sample, and then we return the chick back to the nest. And we also make use of a Bluetooth camera attached to a telescopic pole, which we're looking at there in the left-hand picture. We're looking at the screen to see if there is a chick on the nest before we climb up there, so as to reduce disturbance. And then the image on the right is us, the vulture, on the table, and we're carrying out the necessary work that we're doing. We also have a tracked bird study, which has been going on since 2021, where we've tracked suitable chicks from Dronfield and surrounding reserves, Rooipoort and Fonzelsrus. A lot of this data has been used in Dr. Van der Heefer's work. And we basically track the movement of vultures that fledge. This particular individual is Dottie. She's a female. She was tagged in Fonzelsrus in October of 2022. And this is her movement over the month. And you can see she started just north of Vryburg. She entered Botswana and then flew back south west towards Bloemhof Dam. And then she ended up just north of Warrington. And you can see this is an important indication that vultures don't recognize borders, and the need for cross-collaboration work between all of the Southern African countries, as has been shown by our vultures that when they first fledge, they travel all the way to Angola. Another really exciting project that I'd like to share with you is that we have got a white-backed vulture nest cam. We erected this in a property in the Northern Cape. And the reason we did this was to review a study that was done in 2015 by Johnson and Mern, who looked at the effect that pied crows have on the breeding attempts of white-backed vultures. And so we put this camera up to see, and the impact of that is the same or has increased. And we're also going to use the footage to create suitable content to use for conservation purposes, to draw people to the lesser known details about the breeding of white-backed vultures. And I can happily share with you this evening that we are going to be releasing something special this Saturday on International Vulture Awareness Day. So all please do tune in. Lastly, something that we're going to be starting very soon is we're going to implement a 5-year monitoring program in the Greater Kimberley area, where we are going to observe the effect of lead on the white-backed vulture population in the area. We're going to determine what the lead levels are, and we're going to deploy satellite tracking devices instead of the usual GSM tracking devices. The reason we're going to use those is they have improved accuracy in remote areas. As I said, our birds fly into Namibia and Botswana and even as far north as Angola, where cell phone signal is quite poor. And this will give an indication of all of the areas visited by these vultures during their wandering phase. We will continue to collect blood and tissue samples, which we can then analyze and look at blood lead levels. And we'll use that to gauge if our efforts to encourage the shift towards the use of lead-free ammunition in the area reflects in the population. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Justin. That was a great presentation. And yeah, really, really interesting to see the work that you've been doing and the strides you've made in yeah, testing out these bullets and advocating for them. So thanks very much for sharing that with us.
Thanks, Christina.
Yeah, Justin, that's incredible. Really, it's amazing, and you know, I think almost 300 people at a point attending tonight's webinar. I think it's no secret to them that you know vultures are facing a massive, massive conservation crises at the moment, and the work that yourself and Dr. van den Heever are doing and your team is simply remarkable. And I'd love to highlight some more of it alongside Christina as we have a look at some of these questions that everybody's dropped us in the Q&A box here. Of some might be a bit, some are very similar in nature, so perhaps we might answer two in one. But Christina, perhaps you can start off with the first one from Pamela, maybe.
Yeah. So this is from Pamela Isdell and probably Neville Isdell as well, asking whether the other metals suggested have any adverse effects on health. So could we be replacing, you know, one problem with lead with another problem with any of the other metals?
Absolutely, that's a great question. And anything in excess could be poisonous, even oxygen. Luckily, the metals used are non-toxic. And so we aren't replacing one poison with another. In some instances, lead is used in the formation of brass. We are looking into it. There aren't any studies done on is lead available in brass that is used in the composition of brass. And so at this stage, we can say safely that we are replacing it with environmentally friendly, non-toxic metals.
That's great.
Excellent. And the next question is going to feel a bit like you're being cross-examined here, Justin. But yeah, there's some really great questions here. The next question is from Jane Doherty. Are lead bullets currently used in any government-owned nature reserves? I think you may have touched on that in one of your slides. I know there's a lot of private reserves that you're busy and private landowners that you're busy interacting with, but the situation with regards to government-owned nature reserves, how's that looking?
Yeah, so absolutely. So as I mentioned, for example, in sand parks, especially in where any of the rangers do trail walks, dangerous trail walks, they'll be using a brass solid as they carry ammunition. And then I know that in a lot of the municipal reserves where they have a requirement to take off surplus antelope, they have been experimenting with lead-free bullets. And so that's a really positive move in that direction. And so that they're not government, but they are municipal or provincial reserves. And they have been testing it and using it in those instances.
Excellent. I think word of mouth and the way that you guys are busy addressing this by direct interaction with all these stakeholders is paramount in spreading the word. Yeah, really, that's what's making the difference here for sure.
Absolutely.
Thanks for that. Now, a question from Kevin Shaw, who, in his days at Cape Nature, monitored the vultures at Potberg in Hope, saying that your talk dealt with rifle rounds, but what about shotgun ammunition? South Africa doesn't have as many wing shooters as the USA, where this is a serious problem, but shotguns are still a source of lead pollution in South Africa. Is that something that you're tackling?
Yes, well, I would love to, but I know our manager, Linda, will reel me in here. We definitely do want to in the future. It is a big concern. Obviously, overseas they have massive campaigns against it. In the States, a lot of reserves over water bodies. You cannot use lead-based shots. In California, you can't use lead shot at all for any forms of bird hunting. So I'm doing research into it. We have had lead shot available in the past. It is less available than rifle ammunition, but there are companies already in South Africa who bring in the regular lead shot, who produce steel shot, which is the easiest alternative and the cheapest. And it wouldn't be difficult for them to bring it back in and have it on the shelves, but it requires obviously people to use it. It requires decisions from reserves or farms that would then say to people, look, we're only gonna use steel shot now as opposed to lead shot, and they need to enforce that. But yeah, it's definitely something we're going to be working on in the future.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And yeah, hopefully can drive up the demand for these lead-free alternatives.
The next question from Justin Nicolau. Have BirdLife South Africa or yourself drafted any carcass removal management plans and or guidelines for landowners? And if so, are these available, and where could people, any interested parties, entities, etc., find these resources, Justin?
Yeah, that's a good question. We actually don't really deal with that because we're advocating for lead free, so complete lead free. But that is obviously a consideration that needs to be taken into account, as in many instances that is the reality on the ground. We don't have any documentation on it, but we have organizations that we work with that do, as they are more in favor of that method. And it's something that really, I think, needs to be done well and with a lot of effort. And so we can include that on our website. I think it's maybe something that we should have. But yeah, we don't actually haven't done anything personally on it.
No, thanks, Justin. Yeah, I think I know Justin personally. So, in the event that we end up getting those placed up somewhere on our website, then I can always just direct him to that. Thanks for the question, Justin.
Great. Just not really a question, but a response from Brent Coverdale, who's also a collaborator of BirdLife South Africa's, saying in response to Kevin's question about wing shooting and lead shot, he says they're picking up incidents of lead poisoning in grey-crowned cranes, which could be linked to waterfowl shooting. So Ezemvelo is very concerned about that and looking for alternatives. So that's perhaps something to add to your list.
Yes, yeah, hi Brent. Yes, it's definitely something. Maybe with those specific landowners on those specific properties where that testing is being done. Um, Steel shot it can be made available, and I think in those instances we can put the landowners in touch, and ensure that any of that wing shooting down there and over those water bodies is strictly regulated, and that the use of steel shot is what's used there. Because it's definitely there's these studies from overseas, and obviously you know a lot about it, and so we should definitely advocate the use of steel shot in those areas.
Absolutely.
Justin, I think one of and there's a whole bunch of questions I see in the comments as well, also in the Q&A, and they all sort of link. There's this underlying link, and basically it is whether or not the contents of lead or any form of hunting or meat that we've consumed as a result of hunting, or biltong, or our braai vleis that we love so much as South Africans, keeping it nice and local and lekker, like you so rightfully said. Is there any potential harm for us as humans ingesting this meat? I mean, we don't know what the lead concentrations are in this meat. We're sitting down, we're enjoying a lekker boerie roll, and it might potentially be harmful. Not to mention the fatty biltong as well, which I'm getting a little bit nervous about might having to stop, if we've got lead content in it.
Yeah.
What's the situation? Is it a potential danger for us? What's the situation there?
Yeah, so great question to everyone who's brought that up, and it is a real concern. I don't want to do any scaremongering. My manager again, Linda, she did write an article in, I think it was in the late or the previous African BirdLife magazine, where we are running a project on analyzing venison and looking at the lead content of it. We are finding that in number of our samples, the acceptable lead limit is exceeded the safe level. And so it is a concern. It is in our food. It is in our venison. And it's something that we are working on. Um, Biltong, I'd say in most instances would be a safer bet. But things like mince and vorse and potjie cuts and all of those are going to have a higher incidence of lead in them. And so, yeah, it's something to take note of, but we are working on it. As I've said, my manager Linda, it's a project of ours that we're doing, and yeah, we will be sharing those results soon. But you can read about it in our. I have to check which issue it was, but yeah, it's in there.
Yeah, no, thanks. And I know, all jokes aside, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's a very serious and concerning topic. And ultimately, we need to know what we're busy ingesting, and obviously, the cause for concern is directly linked to us and what we ingest, but more so, it directly ties into the very work that you and your team are busy doing, with regards to the conservation of vultures.
Absolutely.
Um, Sorry, I'm just looking for my next question. I lost it. So from John Harks, who says, "Great work, Justin," and asking about your interactions with the Professional Hunting Association, and whether you're kind of aiming towards any kind of regulations or legislation of lead-free bullets.
Hi, John. Yeah, that's a good question. We are dealing with and have had communication with hunting organizations. SA Hunters is sort of, we do work with them and a few others. Going down the legislative route is quite a difficult and complex thing. Right now, we are sort of just advocating it and working on the merits of the alternatives at the moment. In some instances, certain properties um, are going to restrict the usage of ammunition used on those properties. So, for example, in some Isabella reserves, they can then make it that when they have to do any culling activities, only lead-free options will be used on their reserves, and that might be the approach that will be best going forward at the moment. Will be on properties that are capable of doing it, and on farms and farm owners who are willing to do it, they can then advocate and say, we're going to limit the use of conventional lead core ammunition and only going to allow people to use lead free on our properties. But in terms of bans and that sort of thing, is not our strategy at the moment.
Yeah, it's always best to kind of bring people along and get them to understand the reasoning and support you rather than sort of legislating and telling them what to do, which doesn't always go down well with people.
Yes, yeah, and just to add to that, there is the lead task team which has been formed, and this is really their focus, and they deal, with government departments and with regulations and advisory work, and that's their sort of work, and we bring information into that on what works and what is the incidence of lead poisoning and the sort of the environmental concern of that. But yeah, the lead task team, that is their sort of scope of work.
Right.
Justin, I see. Again, it's one of those questions that will answer a couple of people's questions. But insofar as the research that you've been doing and will continue to do going forward, have you been showing this research? Obviously, I mean, you did mention in your presentation that you have been interacting with organizations, with stakeholders, etc., to bring to their attention the very real issue of the use of lead-free ammunition and the impact it's having on our environment and our biodiversity. But I mean, insofar as sharing the research itself is concerned to hunting associations, any clubs, how is that busy unfolding? And linked to that, obviously BirdLife and you and your team are busy doing all this incredible awareness generating work. But how can members of the public, myself and Christina and every single other 300 odd person involved in tonight's webinar, how can we make a difference? How can we share the word on the use and the promoting of the active use of lead-free ammunition?
Well, I mean, that's a great response from everybody, and it's the sort of partnership that we want from citizenry and from everybody here involved. In terms of speaking to hunting organizations, Linda has spent a lot of time over the years speaking to them, and she shared her research with them on the incidence of lead poisoning, as many people refuted that the lead from lead core bullets was the reason for the lead poisoning in vultures, and very extensive and well, which resulted in his PhD. Through her research, she could show clearly that it was the lead from that is indisputable that the lead found in vultures is from lead ammunition. So she's done all of that work. And we obviously, as part of my project, is to go and speak to them and share the research. But I suppose with the public and everyone listening is just um, sort of stay updated with what we're sharing on the internet in these talks and just speak to people you might encounter. Obviously, the specifics and the details might be difficult to remember or have at hand, but we are getting the word out there, and I think with any advocacy project, the more you inform yourself of the details, the better the ambassador you can be. And so maybe that's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, conservation through education is one of the things I preach on a daily basis. And, everybody attending this talk, I think perhaps one of the best ways you can probably go about making a difference is to head to the YouTube channel tomorrow once this conservation conversation is up. Copy the link, and to anybody whom you know makes use of any form of ammunition, share it with them and try to bring this to their attention. Already then, if 300 people can copy the link and share it with somebody else, that is an additional 300 people potentially, and who's to know the knock-on effects thereafter that will now be, aware of the use of lead-free ammunition. So I think that's maybe a great starting point for anybody who does want to take additional steps.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think that's an excellent suggestion.
Absolutely. And I've also just posted in the chat. So Linda gave a talk a couple of years ago now on conservation conversations on her work to document the source of lead in the vultures. And she's done amazing work, continues to do amazing work. So if you're interested in learning a bit more about sort of the biological side of things, you can watch Linda's talk. So here's a question that I found quite interesting from an anonymous attendee, saying they're happy to change over to non-lead ammo, but I have some 500 lead bullets. Is there any compensation arrangement available? Like, what do people do with kind of stockpiled bullets?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. I know, and a lot of guys, fish out sinkers, which they would then sell for scrap metal. Lead is a valuable metal still used in industry. Perhaps we need to speak to people in the metal industry and encourage them to accept bullets that they no longer want to use. Obviously, we want to be careful with how we handle lead bullets, and safe disposal of them would be really necessary. But it would also be great for people to reuse this metal, which is an important metal used in industry. Just obviously we don't want to be using it in bullets. And so perhaps maybe we could look at adding some information about that so that people can know how and where to dispose of lead bullets that they no longer want to use. And yes, you will get
Absolutely.
paid. I don't know what the lead price is at the moment, but I'm sure it might you might be able to buy a couple of liters of diesel or petrol for the bullets you hand in.
That's good to know.
Justin, Ariana, forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, but Ariana Shade or Shade asks, is there any statistic data available concerning the percentage of ammunition used at the moment with and without lead, not only in a South African context, but also our neighbors? And I find this question quite interesting because you made mention of it, or you alluded to it, that one of the vultures would spend time sort of in southern Angola. What is the situation with our neighbors? Are they on board with this process? Is there stuff that's taking place on a local level for them to promote it? Because it's all fine and well and I think perhaps some people might be thinking this, it's all fine and well for us to be doing all this work, but vultures are one of those species of birds that travel exponential distances and with ease, especially during their wandering phases. So, how is our relationship with neighbors in terms of this entire process?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's data I would like to collect on the proportion of lead versus lead-free ammunition used. I think it'll be quite difficult to get hold of, but it's something I'm trying to do. In terms of working with our neighbors, I was at Namibia. I was in Namibia in February for a lead task team conference there, where we discussed with Namibian authorities the availability of lead-free ammunition in Namibia. South Africa is the best place to produce. We're the only ones producing lead-free bullets and ammunition, and none of our neighboring countries have the capacity. And so the discussion centered around being able to export our products into our neighboring countries and using, as John, you rightly said, using the vultures as the flagship species, which know no boundaries and respect no political boundaries and fly wherever they choose to. Um, and so that was where the discussions were, and that obviously is discussions held at governmental levels, because if we're talking about rounds, then it's legislation around explosives that need to be adhered to. If we're talking about bullets, then it doesn't carry that same legislation because it's just pieces of metal. Um, and so a lot of companies do ship their products to neighboring countries. They've been doing it for a while and they continue to do it. They send it to reserve managers, and to hunting outfitters. So it is available, does get to the neighboring countries, but it is limited. I don't think it's very easy. I think waiting times can be long, especially at border crossings. But it is there. It can get better with time. It can get better with advocacy work. And obviously it's required because these species like vultures travel these vast distances.
Excellent. I think it's reassuring to know that it's something that remains at the forefront of you and your team's work going forward. So that's amazing. And I think as well, those trackers that you're busy deploying onto these vultures, I was just thinking, especially when that slide came up of that youngster that was tagged in 2022, and it's so crucial to see where these birds are going, because it allows you and your team an opportunity to specifically target areas. You're not going into any situation blind. You know where these birds are going, and it's not just one or two birds. It's probably a whole host of birds that have provided you and the team with data. So it's amazing.
It provides great insight into the areas they visit and where we need to direct conservation efforts.
Absolutely. Not movement knowledge is vital. So I have a kind of follow-up question from Pamela saying, well, asking about the difference between the various types of I don't know, ammunition, I guess we're talking about. My knowledge of the terminology is very vague, so apologies. Asking what is the difference with steel shot for water birds, and how are these different to bullets? And then also another anonymous person attendee asked, are pellets used in air rifles a contribution. So perhaps you can kind of give us a little 101 on on the ammunition side of things.
Okay. So let's start with the easiest one with pellet guns. Traditionally, pellets are made of lead, and many people, maybe some of us even in the audience, will have childhood memories of carrying lead pellets in their mouths whilst they were out using their parents' pellet guns. Luckily, you can get copper pellets for use in pellet guns. They aren't very common, but they are out there, and I have been using them for a number of years, and so that is an option. So in pellet guns, traditionally it was made from lead, but you can get copper, little copper bullets. For Pamela's question regarding steel shot, so this is for use in a shotgun as opposed to rifle ammunition, which is being used in rifles. So shotgun ammunition differs in that it uses shot, which is typically little round balls. They're typically made of lead, but the alternative is steel. There are other metals, bismuth being one of them, that is used, but it's incredibly expensive. So steel is the most affordable alternative. So a cartridge of steel shot is made with little round balls that, when fired, impact upon the target, as opposed to a rifle bullet, which is a single projectile that leaves the barrel of a rifle. I hope that clarifies it.
Yeah, thanks. It did for me, hopefully for the audience as well.
Justin, John Malord asks, in one of the papers you talked about, it highlighted the importance of accurate shooting. Does that mean that in the event that you are an inexperienced hunter, you may still be better off making use of lead ammunition?
Yeah, this is a great question. I'm so glad you asked it. No, it doesn't mean that you mustn't use lead free. It just means that you must use more time at the range, practicing and honing your craft. Um, it does bring in the consideration that yes, you do need to be more accurate because the release of energy is different between the bullets. So lead, um, as it fragmented, it created a greater wound channel and secondary cavitation. So more tissue, those fragmenting pieces of lead, which are also very heavy, so they carry a lot of energy. The lead core bullets, if they do not expand sufficiently and they miss a vital organ, can almost work like a needle passing through a body, and so cannot really result in serious wounding. No, it should not be a reason for not using lead free. You definitely should use lead free. Just get to the range, just spend some more time there.
No, 100%. And I think, Christina, I'm going to be very cheeky here and just tie in another question because it's
Sure.
directly linked to this. But Shashi Kasen says, or asks rather, is there any evidence of environmental lead pollution from stray bullets? So in the event that one is not an ideal marksman and the bullets were to go astray in the environment, is there any evidence insofar as environmental lead pollution from stray bullets concerned?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It depends what the bullet encounters, where it hits. But what we're basically doing is we're introducing lead into an environment, which makes it available for uptake in some way or another. And so we would obviously like to restrict our use of lead to maybe only shooting ranges. And so, we wouldn't want to have that. Is it going to be taken up by something? I don't know the likelihood of that. I know that ground hornbills do pick up bullet fragments, but they usually pick them up when they've still got some flesh around them, or they're scavenging on a carcass. I think it's quite unlikely that anything is going to find a bullet and pick it up and ingest it. It's still a possibility, but I think it's quite unlikely. But the main reason is we don't want to be spreading this toxic heavy metal in the environment for really any reason.
100%. I agree. I mean, if it's a toxic metal, then why have it around us? I think is the takeaway from that point. I mean, it's not only harmful to the environment, it's in essence it can be harmful to us in the event that it were to be we were to be exposed to it in the incorrect manners. So I think the pull away from that is to just stay away from lead where possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on that note, there's a comment I've just seen in the chat that says, from Jim Rankin. We have trodden the lead-free fuel path and very successfully. So surely we can do that with lead-free ammunition as well. So yeah, I think those
Yes,
are
yeah,
good
absolutely.
questions.
Yeah, we've removed it, and yeah, it is a great. I might use that in a presentation going forward. Yeah, we've removed it successfully from many industrial applications, and so there is no reason why we shouldn't use it from certainly game management and hunting sectors.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a question from Alistair Stalker saying, was there not work being done on tungsten/alloy bullets? I can't remember if those were things that you mentioned in some of your alternatives.
Yeah, a tungsten has been used in very rare incidences. It's very expensive, and so it's not gonna be readily used. It's just too expensive, and so you can achieve. Um, you must remember when people buy, for example, a pack of bullets, you're normally buying a minimum of 50, and so it's a considerable amount. And when you are developing your round for your particular rifle, you're going to use anywhere between 20 to 40 bullets or rounds. And so, you do use things in quite high quantities before you even get into the field. And so you've got to keep price points low. And importantly, if you want to compete with lead, which is a cheap, ubiquitous, easily worked metal, it's a great metal for all those reasons, then you really have to make sure that you're coming in at a similar price point. Otherwise, you're not going to convince people to transition.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. Yeah, I agree. Justin, I mean, I think from my side, there's still a couple of questions, but ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we are running a little bit into the red in terms of our time available, and obviously this discussion can be ongoing for many hours. I mean, when I first heard about it, Justin, from Dr. van den Heever, I was fascinated, and I think she eventually reached the point where she may have wanted to usher me out of her office because I just wanted to learn more. And I think that same goes for a large portion of the people who watched your presentation tonight. From my side, it was enlightening, eye-opening, and it just ties in so well with the crisis that vultures face. And that there really is just no need for us to have lead in the environment, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do apologize if I was a bit slow in my speech. I'm sorry if I can't attend or address all of the questions, but if anybody really has anything that they want to ask further, please pop me an email, and I'll do my best to respond in due time.
Thanks, Justin. That's a kind offer. And we can also share with you the remaining questions, and you can perhaps answer them on email if you have the time.
Yeah,
But yeah, thanks very much for the great presentation. It was great to hear about your work and spread the word, and hopefully we'll spread the word further with all the audience members tonight. But yeah, thanks very much, and thank you very much to our viewers for joining us for Conservation Conversations. We will, of course, be back again in 2 weeks' time with a presentation around birds and renewable energy. So please do join us for that one. I think John will be in the solo hosting seat that night. So yeah, good luck to John, and yeah, we look forward to seeing you all at the next one. I don't know if you have any last words to share with us, Justin or John.
No, I'll just say thanks to you, Christina and John, for hosting, and to everyone in attendance. It was great to present to you all, and yeah, thanks for all the support.
Great.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Until next time.
Thanks. Good night.
Cheers.